Welcome to another Northern Monkeys datasheet review. This time we're looking at Sternguard Veterans who, I think were already good, but then got a massive improvement in the latest update. So yeah, let's talk about the units and different places to use them and just see how you can improve your Space Marine gameplay with them. So if you look at their profile, it's the completely standard Marine body, I guess, whatever you call it. The 3-up save, toughness 4, 2 wounds, leadership 6. It's all good stuff. However, where these guys have really come to the forefront is from the new buffs. So for those that know, you get Oath of Moment, and now Oath of Moment, if you don't have any of the divergent chapters like Dark Angels, etc., you now get +1 to wound on your Oath of Moment as well. Now, the Sternguard buff came in, where they also, instead of rerolling 1s to wound against the Oath of Moment target, they now reroll all wounds, which is absolutely massive for a variety of reasons. Apart from just being an insanely good buff, they have dev wounds on all their shooting attacks. Now, this is just so good because you can just fish for those 6s, any enemy with a 2-up save, an invuln, whatever it is, you're always going to be able to do some damage to it with the dev wounds. And that goes for everything from your infantry right through to your big monsters and vehicles. Like a unit of Sternguard will take wounds off anything, partially because their Sternguard bolt rifles are so good. If you get them into rapid fire range, they are 3 shots a piece, which, the big squads can end up just putting down an insane amount of firepower. And they have assault and heavy. So the heavy is not the best, really. It's sort of an ability that very rarely comes up, but it is nice when it does come up. And the assault means that you're much more able to advance and get into that rapid fire range to do more damage to enemies. So it's really, really good. There is some concern that these guys are very fragile. They don't have any defense, like, at all. They don't have the 3rd wound despite being veterans. It's a weird sort of quirk with the unit. But they're not too expensive, and there are ways to mitigate that fragility. Now, sort of looking at a bit of that's the sort of data sheet at a broad overview, but looking a little bit deeper at it, the real kind of benefit to these guys is the fact that they are surprisingly good in melee. Most of the guys come armed with a close combat weapon, which, since they're veterans, they didn't get the 3rd wound, but they did get a 4th attack, which is really, really good, because there's a lot of ways sort of throughout the Marine sort of detachments and characters to buff that melee, getting AP on them, things like that, which is then, when you've got so many attacks and full rerolls to wound and full rerolls to hit and +1 to wound now, it gets a bit out of control really fast. And these guys did get a points increase to go with their new ability, but they were already relatively cheap, and they only went up to 100 points, which you pay, 80 points for a standard intercessor squad. So these guys are very, very cost efficient, and like some super elite killer units, you're paying more like 130, 150, even more. So they just offer a kind of more budget option, and their sort of way of attacking is lots and lots of small attacks. So they very much get around things that are like -1 damage or half damage, etc. It's just a great way of dragging enemies down, which I think makes them very good. And don't forget, even though the close combat attacks might be no AP, 1 damage, but the sergeant gets 4 attacks with his power fist, which is -2, 2 damage, and those will get full rerolls to hit, +1 to wound. The sergeant on his own can like very reliably just say, here's 4 wounds, AP 2, damage 2. That'll take a chunk out of any squad, really. Looking at their loadout, I've always thought that the bolt rifle was superior to the combi weapon. It hits better, it has more shots over both different ranges, it's got the assault keyword. I just think combi weapons have been done really dirty this edition, and it's so much better just to have those bolt rifles. I don't see a world where you really want the combi weapon ever, and even with the full rerolls to hit, it's still just good to be hitting on 3s. And don't forget the combi rifles, or whatever, or the Sternguard bolt rifles, they come with AP 1 on them, so they're just more efficient in general. Like, even if you're wounding something like a big vehicle, you're chipping off those wounds far more efficiently. And again, the heavy bolter versus the flamer, The Flamer's fine, but the range isn't great, and the Heavy Bolter, if the Flamer had Assault, maybe it'd be worth it, because then it's got Assault like the rest of the guns, but the Heavy Bolter's just better. It's got the Dev Wounds, it's got the sustained hits. When you've got full rerolls to hit, you don't really mind hitting on 4s, because you're generally always going to be going into the open moment target with these guys. That's the kind of positioning skill of them, is always making sure that you have that. And you get to fish for more Dev Wounds, which is really, really good. So yeah, I rate them all with the Power Fist on the Sergeant, the Power Sword's fine, and the Bolt Rifles and the Heavy Bolter. I think that's really the kind of optimal loadout to equip these guys with. So we're going to do a deep dive on detachments and characters later on, but I just wanted to talk a bit anecdotally about the sort of the way I've been playing Sternguard this edition. I've been playing them mostly in Gladius, and I'd say they are, yeah, I think people are right, they are a little fragile, like they can just get picked up, but I think if you're aware of that and you play with that in mind, you can really get the most out of them. I was running them with a Librarian in them, gives them a 4-up invuln, makes them a lot more durable. The kind of things that want to be killing Marines are like the high AP stuff, and that just gives the chance for it to ping away from it. And don't forget, the Librarian also has a decent shooting attack, which really likes the full rerolls to wound. So it's really good, and he also has Dev Wounds, so it's that kind of nice synergy where he just kind of gives the squad everything that they want out of a leader. So it's really, really nice. And I was thinking about that, the fact that their buff applies to the character they're attached to. You could put a shooting powerhouse like Tigerius in the squad. His overcharge psychic attack, I mean, these are the stats up on the screen here. They're crazy. And if you're in Gladius or anything else, this thing hits on 2s. You can give it full rerolls to wound, full rerolls to hit, +1 to wound. And as well as that, you could play a stratagem and give it something like ignores cover and an extra AP. So even if you don't necessarily get the Dev Wounds from Tigerius, you do get AP 3. It's just really, really strong. With all those rerolls, you just, whatever you roll on the 2d6, you're sinking through in terms of damage. Really, really nice. The sheer volume of attacks as well can just really, really overwhelm enemies. So in this example here, a group of orcs jumped back onto my home objective. Thankfully, they failed their charge, the 9-inch charge into me. But with the Sternguard and these assault intercessors, they just came zooming across the field and completely smashed all the orc boys. Didn't matter that they were, toughness 5, because you just play that Honour the Chapter stratagem and extra +1 to wound, rerolls to wound, AP chopping them down to their War invuln. They've got so many attacks, they'll just tear any unit like this to pieces. And the same for bigger units, like this was a squad of Plague Marines with a Chaos Lord. They'll just tear through them because they've got so many attacks. It was quite a fun thing though. The Chaos Lord had the ability where he constantly, if you don't kill him in a phase, he gets all his wounds back. So it took a big unit like this to finish him off, which is quite cool. I've been running in a sort of a casual league, just a single unit of 5 with Pedro Kantor. He makes them completely dumb. These guys can have like over 100 attacks made in a turn with full rerolls to hit and wound. It's absolutely silly, but we'll talk more about that later as well. Now, if you're really looking to get the most out of Sternguard, there are 2 detachments which I think synergize with them really well. Every detachment's going to get a little bit out of them, like the Imperial Fists ones get the heavy, they've got heavy on all their guns, so that's really nice for them. And I'm sure lots of the Divergent chapters, like Blood Angels, will really like these guys because of their volume of attack. And I know Dark Angels can run a really strong combo with Azrael. But these are just the ones that I've specifically experienced and seen. Gladius, the Doctrines are really good for these guys, just being able to advance and charge, lets them leverage their melee. And they'll still be able to fire off some shots from their bolt rifles while they go charging in. Now they've got the Honour the Chapter stratagem. This one gives them lance and +1 to wound if you're in the right doctrine. Great, because it just takes those attacks from being a little bit threatening with the volume to all of a sudden these guys are hitting on 3s re-rolling, wounding on 2s re-rolling, and they've got AP 1, it's just really, really scary. You can't stack the +1 to wound from Oath, but the AP itself is sometimes just worth it if you're already in the Assault Doctrine. And the Storm of Fire ability, I think stratagem, I think it's really worth using on these guys just because of the amount of attacks they get. And all that. So basically this takes all their shooting up, +1 AP if you're in the right doctrine, and gives it ignores cover. Getting ignores cover on AP1 guns is really, really nice. It just stops it from being negated and can really hurt your opponent. And the extra AP, and as well as getting to advance and shoot something like your heavy bolter, it's just really, really worth it on this squad because they've got so many attacks. And don't forget this will buff whichever character you've got attached to them as well. So it's really, really nice. I just think Gladius is a great detachment, and it's extra great for Sternguard. They have some good synergies. The other one that's interesting is the new Grotsmas detachment, the Librarius Conclave. This one has cool synergies with the leaders. The Librarians, like I said before, make them more durable. And Tigerius, really good in that again, giving them the -1 to hit, giving them the free stratagems. So that's really, really nice. That kind of synergy there with those leaders. Because you don't mind putting librarians in this squad. The kind of downside, I guess, to that detachment is needing to give your units the psychic keyword, but Sternguard take the librarius guys in there really, really well. Now, the Fusillade enhancement. This essentially, not only does it give you sustained hits if you've selected the right detachment ability, which is great for Sternguard, because again, they get loads of shots, they're going to get loads of sustained hits. It also gives them anti-vehicle, anti-monster 5+. Now, if you think about this unit having dev wounds, all of a sudden they're getting their dev wounds on 5s, full rerolls. It's a pretty heinous thing. I think this ability sort of needs nerfing quite badly. I think it's just a bit gross. Obviously, it's not like it shouldn't be in the. Maybe it shouldn't be in the game. I don't know, but it probably needs to go up like a significant amount of points. It's probably the new fire discipline. And speaking of discipline, all the disciplines from that Librarius Conclave, these are little buffs you can put on your Psyche units. They're really, really nice. The +1 strength on the ranged attacks is good. It just might be literally equal +1 to wound into any marine targets. Extra AP, again, going up that pip of AP to negate things like cover is really, really nice. And the +2 move can really let you, suddenly moving 8 might just make that 9-inch charge a 7, and you're sort of shooting enemies that might have been out of range. You can also enhance the range of the unit, which is cool. And you're also getting to get those charges off and leverage all the attacks these guys have. And they'll just really, really tear chunks out of enemy units thanks to all these little buffs that go a long way when they have so many attacks. Now, in terms of running characters in the units, there's lots of they take almost any character very well because the way their buff affects the character, it's really helpful. So there's always good stuff. They're with Space Marines and you're having to kind of pick your chapter and only getting those certain characters. I think obviously the one that is the best all the time is Ultramarines, unfortunately. That's just how the game is. Just because they've got so much variety of characters, and they do happen though to specifically synergize really, really well with Sternguard in a lot of ways. Gilliman, he gets his ability to put out 2 Oath of Moments, so you kill the first one, you get the second one. That can be really, really good for Sternguard because it lets you leverage 2 different Sternguard units in 2 different parts of the battlefield, which is a really, really handy thing to have because generally they become so much less efficient if they're not shooting at the Oath target that you need that. So it kind of gives you a positioning kind of trick to solve, but Gilliman just fixes that problem for you because one unit comes in and nukes a vehicle, the second unit comes in and finishes off an enemy unit, and they're all getting those rerolls. And we'll talk about the general thing with Librarius Conclave that you can do. Tigerius, he gives you those Librarius Conclave Psychic keyword, I believe, so that should be fine. He has his crazy shooting profile that we've talked about, which benefits so much from the Sternguard and Oath of Moment. He'll really, really tear an enemy unit down. And Uriel Ventress, he gets around that kind of squishiness that they have because he can give a unit of Sternguard Deep Strike. So if you have your big librarian leading a squad of Sternguard with that Fusillade enhancement, let's say you've got Gilliman, you've got all 3 of these characters for the Ultramarines. Gilliman oaths one target, sets the other target as your secondary oath, he oaths like a big vehicle, and then another target is a big unit of infantry. So Ventress deep strikes down the Fusillade blob. They shoot the vehicle with their dev wounds, their anti-vehicle 5+, and they'll just nuke it because of all the rerolls. It's just and dev wounds, it's very uninteractive. It just blast your opponent to pieces. And then in the meantime, Tigerius and his unit have moved up towards the second Oath target. Now that that vehicle's dead to all the dev wounds, Tigerius and his squad open up on the infantry target, and you can just take 2 huge chunks out of your enemy's army. And sure, you've exposed your units a little bit, but Tigerius can give them free overwatch, the Librarian has your other unit on a 4+ invuln, and Gilliman can be giving you stratagems free to kind of help with things like that. So really, really good. Just a pretty horrendous combo that your opponent will have to screen carefully. It's a little unwieldy and you can definitely mess it up, but I think it's good, as long as you don't get greedy on that first Oath target. Now, in terms of other leaders that you've got, the normal lieutenant, I think he's really, really good. He benefits from their rerolls. He gives them fallback, shoot and charge, which is really nice, because again, Sternguard work in shooting and melee, so having the ability to kind of flex around and do that damage, it's really, really nice. The lethal hits is a bit of an anti-synergy in a weird way, because if your hits are lethal, you can't get the dev wounds, but it's fine, you know. He can add a lot of shooting as well to the squad with his, you know, like a plasma pistol, full rerolls to wound, might just kill any, you know, smoke a marine target. And he has his power fist, which again benefits from that full rerolls to wound, makes it a lot more dangerous. And then sort of on a personal note, I've been really liking Pedro Kantor. If you put him with a full 10-man squad of Sternguard, they get over 100 attacks. He has a buff called Oath of the Rhine, where you get an extra attack on your squad. However, that applies in melee and shooting. So they have like 4 shots each from the heavy bolter and the bolt rifles up close, and he has like 5 shots from his gun. It's just absolutely silly. And don't forget as well, he's got really good melee. It's only 5 attacks, but it's AP 3, damage 3. With +1 to wound, full rerolls to hit and wound, you know, easily tearing vehicles up. How impactful the OC2 that he gives you for being your warlord, I don't know. But, you know, it's good to have on the Sternguard. You never know when it might just randomly win you the game one time because you get to out-OC an enemy. It's quite cool. So yeah, I think the big one is Ultramarines, because there's so many Ultramarines characters, they're really, really good. If you guys know any other combos with them, give us a shout in the comments and let us know. But yeah, I've been really enjoying Sternguard with Pedro Kantor as well. So yeah, thanks for watching. Bit of a deep dive into Sternguard. I've been testing the unit quite a lot. I was sort of running them before they got the big buffs. I'd literally just made a second squad of them for my army, for intending to run with Pedro Kantor in like a kind of casual league. I had to dial that back as I was running in Cursors and Sternguard, and then the buff happened, and yeah, you had to kind of dial that back because Space Marines are very, very good now. But yeah, I think I've been playing with them and finding them to get really, really good results. I think Librarius Conclave hasn't necessarily been like tearing up the meta as far as I'm aware, but I mean, Sternguard are still good regardless of trying to do those like stupid heavy-handed combos. So yeah, test the unit out. If you've got a bunch of veterans on your shelves, you know, dust them off, get them in play. And yeah, thanks for watching. Like and subscribe.